call this meeting to order. The Pledge of Allegiance first.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did do something a little out of the order. We're going to go to adjustments to the agenda because one of them, the adjustment will be presentations, short presentation.
Yeah, can we add Reuben Mahar for a CTC presentation as 10.4 under new business?
You don't want to do it under presentations?
It's at your discretion, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to do it, whatever is convenient for you and Reuben.
Yeah, where it works.
Do another presentation.
Okay. Yep, so.
So make it
I guess we'll put it under
3.2.
Oh, I thought you said new business.
Well, I'll amend the motion to 3.2 as another presentation.
Okay. Yep. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is it discussion? Do you have anything?
Yeah, I was going to ask to nominate Rachel Morris to the,
That would be new business.
New business?
new business, all right.
Okay, which would be 10.4. That's for,
Conservation.
Conservation Commission.
okay. Okay. All right, presentations. The Johnny Daigle, right? Come up from behind me.
Point of interest, are we supposed to be wearing masks or no? We're
The
okay?
state says no.
And everybody's
We're
comfortable?
following the state guidelines.
We've been pretty busy so far this spring. We've all about 1,200 yards of surface gravel on the gravel roads. Of course, we had spring cleanup. We had easy winter. So cleanup will take quite long, of course. Biggest thing we've been working on the last 2 weeks is beaver dams. They've been plugging up our culverts. We have about 8 different places. We've been doing a real good job at it too. We've been putting pipes in them called beaver deceivers. So the state recommends, but there's usually a reason why we put in 4-foot pipes. The 6-inch beaver deceivers doesn't really work in a heavy rain. So you probably noticed we've been using a lot of old lobster traps and throwing them in front of the culverts. A lot of people have commented on it, but it's the old ones that get taken to the transfer station. They're free for us, and we can go and drop them in front. And they usually last a week and a half. Right now, if I have the beaver trapped, live trapped, they'll be taken to Store Pond. And we've had beaver issues there because there's only one outlet to that pond. And so we're going to keep putting lobster traps in and clean them out for a while, see how that goes. We do have a lot of work planned on this summer. We have shoulders. We have over 2,000 yards of material that we have to haul for shoulders on Dutch Neck and Gross Neck and the Landon. Hopefully we'll get started on that the following weeks. Excuse me. Also, I'm training a new guy to run the grader, which is going to take a while. So the roads being graded will be a little bit slower this time around. I believe you'll catch on all right. We do have one dirt road that we're going to hot top in half of it this year. We have to go on Noyes Road. We're going to do half it. We got material and get that ready for the hot top season. Last year, we were supposed to have Castor and Chapel and Simon hot top, due to us working at the transfer station, taking care of landfill, we wasn't able to, so they will be done this year. We're also gonna add in Reef Road into that. That's about it on the roads. Transfer station, landfill is closed now. We turned around, it was $427,000 project. It was difficult to find a contractor to fulfill the whole project. So I decided that we take on half of it, and the engineer ended up calling different contractors around for the other half. The only one that we could get to apply for it was George Hall, which they come in at $225,000. In total, with us doing the project and with George Hall's price, ended up being $365,000. Of that amount, DEP is going to reimburse us 75%. They'll be reimbursing transfer station undesignated fund of $274,000, which is pretty good. The landfill lasted for 20 years. It was only supposed to last 6 or 7 years. We were able to make it last a lot longer. So it was a tremendous savings to taxpayers of this town and Frederick and Cushing. The problem we run into now is we have to truck everything off. And the charges that we're charging now is 9 cents a pound. But since '89, these towns have saved quite a bit of money by going to a landfill. But DEP will not license any of the landfills for us. So everything is being trucked off. That's about it.
So I found out, we got our letter.
They mentioned Eastport in the first line.
Yeah, I know.
What's
Well,
going on?
I did make sure that they meant us. So they do. The numbers are
match
good.
up. Yep.
They're gonna send another one out, but I was very excited about this. And what I did find out is, the $274,135.61 will be reimbursed quarterly over 5 years, depending on everything. So it comes out to be about $54,827 a year that will be reimbursed. Also, there's gonna be another $10,750, which was retainage. That will also qualify, so we'll get a little bit more of that. Again, when I called to find out about over 5 years, if there's more fees collected or something like that, we could get more at times, but eventually we will all be made whole. The one caveat we have to this is that this was town of Waldoboro labor, so essentially we need to be treated like a contractor. So that reimbursement will come back to Public Works Department.
Is it just labor that we're getting reimbursed?
Labor and
Equipment.
And
equipment.
equipment.
But what I'm trying to
You said
explain
it
is
doesn't go to the transfer station.
it doesn't go to the transfer station budget
Whoa.
because you have to reimburse.
So as long as we didn't make the payment out of the transfer station budget, then we're golden, right?
Well,
we did.
you had to.
We had to pay for it up front. Once the job was all done.
So the portion of Hall goes back. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yep.
But technically, we were our own labor and
Right.
equipment, and that's how we got reimbursed. So that's, you know,
So 75% of it.
well, no, because technically, How much was Hall?
Hall 225.
So 75% of
104.
225 goes back to Hall. And then there's a whole share we'll have to pay, because we'll still have to pay our Waldeboro share.
Yes.
But I just want everybody to be aware. I don't want everybody thinking $274,000 just, because you were thinking that.
I was thinking that, but you clarified it now, so.
Well, I just wanted everybody to be aware of that,
Yeah.
so, because that was what, you have to look at the town as a contractor.
Yep.
But this is really good news.
Well, we're talking about landfills, and construction demolition debris. I'm wondering if you could clarify, you did an estimate a while back, going off topic here, but it's germane to the discussion we're having. You did an estimate a while back about, and I think your department, you priced your department doing it, tearing down 80 Gray and disposing of the CDD. Do you recall that?
Yeah, but it's kind of lost now because the landfill's closed.
Right, so it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, it would change.
We wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
tip it at our place. We'd have to bring it somewhere else with transport and.
right, it'd be $72 a ton, tipping fees, and you get 10 tons on them containers, and that's $450 for each container. So
Did you estimate how much debris you could pull out?
Yeah, he did, I'd have to go back and look.
Okay.
Well, it should be a copy of it here somewhere. We had to write that.
It's just important, I think, that people understand what's involved in one of the questions that's on the ballot, that's all. Some of the numbers I've seen thrown around are just, they're not close. They're way, way low. And that concerns me.
Yep. Okay.
Could we dig that number out, Julie?
Tonight?
Sorry?
Tonight?
Well, not.
No,
You
yes.
can dig it out and post it on the website or do something so people know what the potential cost is if we do decide, the town decides to vote to tear it down and carry the stuff away.
But that's the cost for Public Works to do it.
That's right.
But we can't do it.
We can't do it,
No.
so,
We don't have the,
I don't
but
have
you'd
the
at least
excavator, but-
calculate the tipping fee at $72 a ton.
right, but,
And you'd know the tonnage.
okay, but the contractor who does that would take it someplace else. I don't know where they would take it.
Well, there aren't a lot of places in Maine where you can dump CDC.
But $72 is our cost
Right.
through the MRC.
Right,
It could be higher.
It could be higher.
That's how-
yeah.
I'm not sure that it would be,
Our calculations would be compatible.
I hear what you're saying.
Does anybody else got any more questions for John?
I have no problem providing the information that John did, but like I said, that $72 is
This is our price.
our
Yeah.
price.
Right.
Yeah.
Seth?
Yeah, just a quick question. If one can separate masonry debris and steel, and so there's no organic stuff in it, is it possible to either bury it in the site, since it's non-hazardous, or bury it, can the town dispose of strictly masonry stuff, it's all brick? Might be more expensive to separate it, but that's a hell of a lot of tonnage, I'm just curious if that's permitted by the state.
It is, but I don't know if I'd want it.
Well, a different question, but I mean, as opposed to $72 or more a ton is what I was wondering about. I'm not in favor of tearing it down anyway, so.
Gross neck and Dutch neck shoulders.
Hopefully next week.
And the painting has been,
He's been coming in nights, he's done some of the crosswalks.
painting of the crosswalks.
Yeah. He's been,
There's a lot going on, we forget what's going on. Cool. Okay, nobody else got any questions? Okay, I guess you're all set?
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
All right, thank you for the update. The Ruben Mahar. Would you like to step up?
That's how we're starting everybody on the
Yeah.
Reuben Mahar.
All right, I will attempt to live up to that hype. So we are at the end of about a 3-year project, and I wanted to come tonight to thank the existing select board. At some point, stuff will change. We've got an election coming up. I want to make sure you're all clear on what you've gotten done. When I came in, the town had just gotten 70+ houses connected to fiber, which is a big deal. We just got another 30 or 40 connected to cable internet. While it's not the same, they have nothing. So that's 40 more people that can work, that can educate. There's at least one person that works in healthcare that can take training at home instead of driving in. We couldn't have done that without all the people here involved and without your support. We had a lot of spirited discussions with vendors, probably a good way to put it. And I've been thinking a lot about that process in the internet, which got me thinking about clams. Go on this journey with me. The upweller stuff you've just gotten done to reseed, that's going to make a dent. In 100 years, when we're all gone, well, some of us might be here because of science, but in a century, that's going to have an impact, a meaningful impact. I assume you'll get a statue. I'd like to do the same thing with a network. And to start that, I need permission to work with the CTC on a list of questions that we want to take to every ISP. I'm starting this way so everything is out, everything is public, and everything is clear. I am not giving you technical definitions now because there's 1,000 different ways to build this. We need to purposefully ask a list of questions, define what we want, and see who can work with us to see what our options are. And then from there, narrow it down and see what we want to get done. We are not going to have a 100 gig network in 6 months. This is the next long project. If we want to be competitive, if we want to have a growing economy, if we want to make another dent for the next century, we need to start looking at that. This is the next important thing since they electrified the country. And when we look at things that we've been successful with, like all the work that Max and Julie and everyone has helped us do with grants, the competition for all that is way more intense. And while I'm hopeful we might get some more houses connected, I think we're past that point. I think we need to change tack and go to the next step. Now that these homes are connected with cable, I think we're ready to go there. That's also why we haven't asked this question very widely before, because we chose to focus on this and get Chapel and the roads in front of and behind that done. So I guess that's what I'm looking for. I don't know if you guys do a ceremony or vote or ask a question.
Well, I think
A ceremony.
yeah, to me, I just explain a little bit more about it.
So what we'd be asking for is we're going to ask every ISP, and none of these are concrete things because again, there's a bunch of different ways you can define a network. So I'll come up with the wish that I made. I would like to ask if any ISP will work with us to do a few things. I want a single fiber drop to every residential address in town. One piece of glass fiber will deliver an amount of information even now that will blow your mind. And when that amount's not enough, if you change the type of light you put through it, that amount will increase. The second point I would like to ask for is to have 2 dark fiber strands to each municipal building back to the town office. My third request is to have 2 dark fiber drops from the high school to every municipal building. Here's why. A fiber drop to a house will get you data, and you can put anything over data. That can be a phone, that can be TV, that can be Netflix. There's projects I've worked on at work where we're using virtual reality to work with people that have dementia, but you need a solid upload to do that. I've seen projects where we're using incredibly high resolution cameras, so you can do an eye-to-eye consult for things like telehealth or a psychological visit, but they need to see your eyes. You need a lot of upload for that. You need very low latency. There's one technology that will do that, and it's fiber. Dark fiber is just fiber with no light in it. The reason you would want 2 strands from here to anywhere is because what that would allow you to do is take all of Waldeboro's buildings, all of its infrastructure, and make one town-controlled network with one internet connection that lets you interconnect everything and put any service over those fibers that you want. Why would it come from the school? This is the next thing you need to educate people on. You don't need a PhD to splice fiber or to build a computer network. So imagine having a school system where you can take your students and train them on your basic physical network stuff, like people would do in shop with cars, but they can learn it right there. And a high school graduate could jump into a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year job. If you Google network technician, I'm not joking around. Those jobs don't need a college degree. They need anyone that's a mechanic, those smart guys, those same people usually can do that kind of work. And we have vendors right in town that can't find enough of that work. So I want to work with the CTC on those basic things to define out a question that we all agree on to ask every ISP, hey, will you work with us? I'm hoping they will. If they won't, the next hard question is, okay, do we build it ourselves? Can we work with other towns in the county or multiple counties to work together? This is how we start that next conversation for this next push.
Just like we found when we were connecting homes with the internet, cost becomes a huge factor.
It does, and that's why this is such a hard question. And that's why we want to start to work with partners that already have some infrastructure.
Is there, do you know any price ranges or anything like that?
Oh, this is like building a road system, which is why you get involved with other ISPs. This is also where I don't want to go on a record with numbers or technologies, because I could scare the pants off of you all night with a very wide range in both cost and abilities. I also don't want to speak for any ISPs on what I think they know how to do. I want to ask them a base question and see what they say.
So you're just looking for approval to
To
communicate with ISP.
Right. But understand, I'm asking a very big question, and it's something people, I assume, will get excited about very quickly. So we're taking on an extremely hard task, and I think it's necessary, but I want to go into this eyes open.
I think the committee wanting to take that task on is huge, to take that responsibility on.
One other thing while I have you captive.
Oh, no.
Chapel.
Chapel.
People are signing up.
They are. People are
Getting
getting hooked up.
connected.
I need to get that photo printed of Robin's driveway with the spectrum.
Robin's driveway, and I just want to say thank you, and I just want to take a moment, even though but to me that was huge.
It is huge. It's a very big deal.
But you're the current chairman of the CTC. I want to also thank John Lawrence for all of his
Oh,
hard work
absolutely.
with
We're
that.
standing on the shoulders of giants here. No one person gets this stuff
Right.
done.
And I just want to say, because he was such an advocate for Chapel, the initial mapping and going out and doing the surveys.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted to mention that, because he was instrumental in that. And I just wanted to give him a shout out and just thank you and the CTC for all the work with Chapel. It was a long time coming, but it was nice to get that photo. There was some dancing in the office. Max, unfortunately, I got that photo on a Thursday. Max wasn't there, so he didn't get to participate in the happy dance, but we were really happy.
Well, I just
that
celebrated with some cider when I saw that.
Excellent.
Yeah, if I could just point out as well, part of that process for Chapel involved negotiating a franchise agreement with the ISP that's put it in there. And that took a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So they were very patient. They showed a lot of understanding. And thank God it's done.
Those are things that will need to be in that discussion, and there may be some discussions that need to be behind closed doors when we talk about things like franchise agreements. Like I said, there's a very wide range of ways to do this. There's also some opportunities that may be new to you. Stuff I wouldn't want to name here because I don't want to overpromise. But there's a lot of options in front of us. There's a lot of very interesting things that are potentially available.
Well, would somebody like to make a motion to let the CTC move ahead with their proposal?
I think that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any more discussion?
Great news.
Hearing none, all those in favor? You have the approval to move forward? Thank you, sir.
Nice to actually see you and
Right?
Yeah.
I'll be back to troll
your
YouTube
active
in no
face.
time.
And nice to see everybody's face.
There's no public hearings tonight. We've done the adjustments to the agenda already. Citizens' comments. Anybody have any citizens' comments?
I have a couple that I have to read.
You have to read?
Mhm.
All right, we'll do those first.
Oh, you want to do mine? No, you can go. They can go
Okay,
first. I can
okay.
go last.
Anybody?
Anybody, pick one.
Okay. Well, do I come up here?
Yes,
You come up
please.
there. That
Okay.
way we can hear you on the
Yeah.
recording.
Okay. Well, my name is Rebecca Cooney, and I'm from away. I'm from as far away as Queens, New York, but I have deep roots in Waldoboro. My father and mother met at a street dance in Waldoboro, I don't know, a long time ago, in the 40s. And my grandmother lived here. My cousin John Cooney and his family grew up here. So yeah, I have roots here, or I have a lot of love for Waldoboro. My family loved Waldoboro. I can't tell you what a privilege it is to live here. I wake up every day grateful to be in Waldoboro. I want to talk about gentrification, because I hear a lot of people talk about how afraid they are of gentrification and they don't want Waldoboro to be gentrified. And I really understand that fear. Waldoboro is a coastal town. But I worry that the fear is so great that we're willing to take on, say, invite to live in Waldoboro 70, 100 older adults who are on public assistance as a deterrent against gentrification. And I think where Waldoboro is concerned, you guys are doing great in establishing preventive measures against gentrification. And I salute the town board for this. I salute you guys for establishing or freezing and reducing taxes for long-term homeowners in need, and for having a program of a financial assistance for homeowners that need to make repairs on their roof or a boiler so that they can stay in their home and they are not evicted or losing their home. And then you also have an abundance of low-cost housing, and I salute that. I come from a neighborhood in Queens with 3 homeless shelters, and we are a small community of about 500 people. We're an isolated community, and we don't have any protections against gentrification. And we happen to be near highways, and we happen to be a mile away from the city, so yes, the real estate developers are circling our little neighborhood all the time, every day. And I'm sure the same is true in Waldoboro, but I want to say you are so lucky to have these measures in place, and a lot of places don't have it. And the only one thing that you guys could take on would be middle-class housing. And I know that the board, if you were to take that on, you would achieve it because you've already achieved so much. And I just want to say that I think instead, I think the challenge for Waldoboro is bringing in and keeping young people, attracting young people, keeping our youth here. And otherwise, instead of gentrification, we'll have fossilization. And I just think we don't want to wither. We don't want a town that's going to wither. And if I remember my mother and my parents meeting downtown at the town dances, or if I remember as a child shopping on Main Street and dropping in on the 5 and 10, which was just heaven for a little girl. I mean, with all things within reason for children. I mean, it was great. And I worry that out of fear of gentrification, that maybe we're using the wrong word. Maybe we should think of it as revitalization to attract young people and keep our youth here. And, you know, in Jean Lawrence in the Lincoln County News, she recently was saddened about the closing of the Waldoboro Methodist Church. And she said, once you start losing your youngsters, it's very hard to keep a church going. And this is the choice that we have as a town, which is to face forward and to look at each proposal and say, is it going to make our town more alive, or is it going to help our town wither just a little further? And I just hope that we can keep this in mind with whatever new things that we take on, that gentrification, let's retire that word where Waldoboro is concerned. Let's talk about revitalization. That's all I have to say.
Would you like to go?
Bob. I'm worried about some figures that have been going around, especially on this vote that we have June 8th. So in the letters and opinions section of this week's Free Press, Elaine Johnston of Waldoboro wrote that the town of Waldoboro is expected to receive between $35,000 to $50,000 annually from VOA. So that's, a big number. I'm like, wow. So this information was received from quote unquote informed local officers. When I asked Brian Seitz of VOA if this number was accurate, his response was, quote, "That is not a figure that I've ever heard, discussed, or seen anywhere. Where did that come from?" And then with this amount of misinformation circulating, how can we have a fair vote in Waldoboro? There's a lot of misinformation out there. Your response to this might be that the citizens themselves are responsible for gathering relevant information, but this information is allegedly from local officers that should know the answers. How can we have a fair vote without knowing the details of something that may profoundly impact the community? There is too much information circulating. I would like to see the details of the contract made public before there is a vote. So we're voting on something that we don't even know that's in the contract. And Brian Seitz responded yet again to me today. He said, "Yeah, that range did not come from me or anyone at VOA. Thanks for letting me know, Brian." So he confirmed that, this is just misinformation and it's right there for anyone to read. Now people are going to be spreading that misinformation.
So in the MOU that we'll be talking about tonight, there is no number. That any number that the town and the VOA agree to will be in the option agreement if the vote were to pass on June 8th.
She says she has information from the local town, so I'm assuming she got it from you guys. I do not know. But that's numbers, like Bob was saying, that are out there that's just, misinforming the public on how to vote. And she's not the only one who had that number out there.
Is there anybody else? Would you like to go in? Oh, no, thank you. Seth?
Yeah, I just wondered, sorry.
We gotta get used to the old way.
No, I'm happy to. Seth Hall, resident of Waldoboro, small business person, interested party. I just was gonna ask, is since you have a line item of old business for the MOU, is it more appropriate to make some comments in the context of that discussion than now?
If it's about the MOU specifically, yes.
It's about payments in lieu of taxes. So it's pretty specific to the MOU, I think, but I can do it either time. I'm happy to do it.
We'll just wait till then, if you don't mind.
That sound okay?
Yeah, and, because we'll be discussing it, so then.
Great, thank you.
Is there anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. Select board comments. Bob, do you have any?
No, I don't.
Okay. Katie?
I'm deferring to
Deferring to the
Jan.
colonel?
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess you're up.
Okay, the American Legion's gonna have a parade on Monday. It starts at 9 o'clock. They're forming up out in front of this building. I don't know a whole lot more about it, other than Donna said that there was an ad last week, and there's gonna be an ad tomorrow. So there's no bands in it. There's, I heard, gonna be a fire truck. People walking, and then they're gonna have the wreath throwing and a presentation up at the intersection up there by Pine Street.
Cool. That's it. Jan, you have anything?
Yeah, I have all kinds of things. I'm just still in shock that Bob didn't have anything though. Maybe it'll come up,
Me
maybe
too.
in time, something will arrive. Well, I did want to say that the Shellfish Committee sponsored cleanup. The third one was Sunday morning, started at 7:30 a.m. The colonel and I were down there. We had about 20 people, I think, right?
21.
Yep. And they came from the clamming industry, from the snow crawlers, from the Conservation Commission, and there were some people out there picking up garbage from the select board. It was a nice turnout. It was probably the loveliest day we've had this year. And once again, it just really, I love to see the collaboration between different groups in town, all doing something good for our town. And that's exactly what I saw, lots of them. I understand the snow crawlers have a real system of production where one does one comes behind him, does the next thing. I'd like to see that in action. I think that was Tony Lash, I heard, really has real production and can fill a truck in no time. So that was all good for the town. The other thing, I got a little notice today that Lincoln Health is going to sponsor a vaccination clinic right at the VFW here. It is a sign up or walk in. It's Thursday, day after tomorrow, the 27th, at the VFW, right there in Mill Street, from 2 to 6 p.m. So that's nice. The third thing I wanted to say, that, and I think it's worth mentioning, that Madomic Valley High School now employs Lincoln County's second teacher of the year. Bill Hinckley, math teacher extraordinaire, is the Lincoln County's teacher of the year. He's at Madomic Valley. He's been there for, I can't remember, I read in the paper, but he's been there for a while. But he's a very innovative teacher. Excellent. And the one that's just finishing up is Heather Webster, who is a very creative English teacher. Both well-deserved for them. And isn't it nice that our school has two right in a row of all the schools in Lincoln County? We lucked out again. So that's it.
I just want to thank you guys. Thank you guys. I'll come back to you. I just want to thank you too for showing up for the cleanup, you know, with the shellfish stuff.
One more coming up.
And one we have
Saturday. I think Katie's going to be there. Saturday. What day is it?
June, hold on, a minute. It's June 5th,
What?
June 5th.
June 5th? And that's a Saturday morning,
Yes.
right? And what
Yes.
is the time on that one?
It's 7:30 in the morning.
7:30 in the morning again. Another early bird.
I might have to go down there and
Katie's
spend
gonna
the night.
struggle. Katie's gonna struggle with that one.
Yeah, but
Okay, Bob.
I wasn't entirely frank with you when I said I had nothing,
How did we know that?
but I wanted
You want to see my
others to
shocked
go
face?
first. You always choose me first, and I just don't think it's fair. So there were a few things I wanted to say. One is that the Economic Development Committee at its last meeting wanted the select board to know that they voted in favor of supporting the ongoing negotiations with Volunteers of America, as the Economic Development Committee sees a potential economic benefit to rehabilitate the former 80 Gray School. That motion passed 5-0 with one abstention. I abstained because I'm voting on that in other venues. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. Did you see the letter from Ted Becker? He wrote a very thoughtful,
Yes, I did.
very thoughtful letter, I thought, about flags.
oh,
And
I
I'm
did.
not gonna
Yes, I
read
did
the
see
letter.
that.
I think it stands on its own.
I saw that.
But I thought he made an excellent point about times to put them out.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that we can maybe discuss that at a future meeting to figure out something that works for everybody, without ruffling feathers. So I'll just put that out there as a thought. I was gonna suggest we have an executive session, but I don't think I need to go there. I think we had that today about, I won't even mention it. I'll just let that go. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have even brought it up. I apologize. Cryptic enough here? Yeah. I was a little bit disturbed by an article I wrote recently, read recently in the Lincoln County News. That could have been interpreted to take the town to task in the manner in which our town manager, our fire and police departments, our community navigator, and our planner, and our code enforcement officer all jumped in to help a woman who lost her home to fire. Reading the article made it sound like this is a heartless community that only pays attention to the letter of the law and doesn't do what it should do to help people. And I hope you elucidate on that a little bit, Julie, when you make your comments. This town worked very, very hard to help this person who was in need. And I believe a solution was found, and we're still working on a permanent solution. But I felt that article lacked a little bit of well-roundedness. It could have done better coverage of what the town is actually doing to help this person. And I had a question. There's been discussion at the MMA about Maine law enforcement accreditation. Does that ring a bell with you, anybody?
Yes.
Okay. Are we engaged in that process with the MMA?
If you'll recall, during the budget committee, the budget meetings, when John Lash was here that night, part of what the select board and budget committee authorized was that software
Okay,
for policies. That's one of the first steps that you
Okay.
get towards accreditation.
all right. The concern I had about the discussion was that it's basically paperwork.
It is.
It's a
I've been
process.
through that process.
Yeah.
So it's a national accreditation. It's just
Right.
not just a Maine.
So it's checking off the items that you've done, but
But part of that is
Yeah.
important, and I'll tell you why. Having been through it, and from whence I came in New Jersey, I believe 3 of my departments went through that, and it was a long. You say it's paperwork, but a lot of it is policy related, and good policy and good regulations make for better decisions. So it's not really just paperwork, and that they're standardized. And that's part of what John was explaining about updating the policies. And so I think it is more than just paperwork, but you would be amazed, and I can't really speak to Maine as much as I can from whence I came, at the differences in policies. And I think that standardization of policies that everybody's going for may help with some of the issues that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So one of those things that was really important was, say you're processing a DUI. There's checklists, there's a policy, there's a procedure you follow, it's standardized, you know what it is. So you would know what it was if you walked into one town or another town in the same state. I'm not sure that that's a bad idea, and I think that's what John was taking steps towards when he was going with that policy software.
Okay, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I think it's good to have those policies, and it's good to make sure that your guys have been trained and understand. But a lot of the training is peer training. And my concern is that we're going beyond the formality and going down to the nub of the quality that's required to make sure that, yes, they've done the training, but not only have they done the training, that they get it. They get why they're having the training, and they're getting why we have the policies, and they're getting the importance of how those policies
If you're doing the accreditation properly,
Exactly.
then you get that.
Yeah, right.
That's part of the accreditation.
That's the part that, yeah.
You're only, and I'm not gonna sit there and say there probably aren't places that just say yes, 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 yes. That's not what we would do here. And I think that's why John made his request. And I don't remember, to be honest with you, if it was in capital or operating. Does anybody else remember? I don't remember.
I remember in talks.
But that is one of the things that we were doing.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that is a step towards that.
Appreciate your comment.
And from whence I came, you got and you might want to pass this on to the MMA executive committee, is once you got that accreditation, there was a reduction in your liability. insurance.
No, there is, and that's one of the reasons the MMA is so focused on it. It does affect insurance.
It does affect your insurance rating.
Yep.
And more training is never a bad idea,
No,
never a bad idea.
no, as long as it's good quality training, I agree. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, this is select board, so.
You're up.
Go ahead, Seth.
During the citizens' comments, when we said we defer the question, I forgot to mention my 2 comments. I just sat down and I would like the opportunity, if that's all right. If not,
About,
just
He
citizens'
forgot his
comments.
public comment.
oh, you forgot, oh, okay.
Public comments.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were gonna go back to the MOU.
I just completely, no.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, I guess it's age-related lapse. Seth Hall, citizen. I had a couple of questions and a statement. I'm really happy to see Katie back. It's been a long, long time. It's fun. In years past, starting about 5 or 6 years ago, I revived the process of having a candidates forum. The first one we had Beth Birmingham moderate. We had Kat Scove moderate one, and I forgot his first name, Newcomb, the history teacher at the high school, moderated. Jacob, thank you. And then for the last 2 years, when I was actually running, the town took them over, and they were moderated by J.W. Oliver from the Lincoln County News, and he did a lot of towns around here. I noticed this year there doesn't appear to be any effort to do that, and I was sort of curious as to why, if there was a reason the town didn't pick that up this year, and just curious.
I don't know if there's any.
I don't think that
Approach.
typically, well, I don't think the town took it over.
Well, you invited the editor to do it, I think.
Well, because I was asked to. I haven't been asked.
Okay, that's good enough. So in response to that, since there isn't going to be a forum like that, you'll see in the paper this week, in social media, I'm going to have a candidates question meet and greet, if anybody wants to participate in it, at the Annex on the 3rd of June. That's a Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. We're going to have refreshments, pizza and beer, soft drinks. If anybody wants to just ask questions, I'm not going to be making statements, but if anybody wants to ask me anything, hopefully you get a straight answer. So it's a way to engage the voters, I hope. And I hope they'll come. Thank you.
All right, town managers reports.
Couple of things. Absentee ballots are available. You just have to call the town office or you can stop in. So they are available to you. I didn't know if you would touch on it, but I did want to mention that the Methodist Church in town is closing. I was a member of that church. I think I might have been the youngest one, and that is a sad thing that's happening. Jan stole my vaccination clinic on Thursday at the VFW, but it is on our sign. We did have it on Facebook, and that was a great collaboration between us and Lincoln Health to arrange for that to come to Waldoboro. Believe it or not, we still get a lot of calls about where they're available and when something was coming to Waldoboro, so that was a really good thing. Just to keep you up to date, I have contacted FB Environmental, our environmental engineering firm, to do a wetlands delineation for us up at the property behind the ball fields, where hopefully the medical arts facility and the community center could go. Also, we have as of January fiscal year, July 1st, we will have a new town clerk. The interview committee selected Pam Jameson, and she will be starting July 1st. And I just want to thank, we had actually 2 amazing finalists. It was a really hard decision. Took about a week to make a decision, but we're very happy to have her. She will be coming in for training on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 5. So if you saw her when you came in today, that's who that was. And I will address the Viola Stone article. BC and I had a conversation about it. There was a lot of feedback on that article.
You got some calls you shouldn't have gotten.
I got some calls I shouldn't have gotten, I will admit. Some of them I was taken aback by the tone of some of them. And I do think that people read it and didn't I wish one thing that had been in there was when I was explaining her potentially having to sell the camper trailer campground model and then get a different one. I think what was in there was, and then we can help her find something that conforms. In the meanwhile, her family did come in for the first time, talk about a permit. She can have a temporary permit for that unit for up to 3 months while a new conforming unit is ordered. And we're working together with her family and with a local organization to facilitate that. Again, I was very proud of how Stan and Max, Paul Smeltzer, our chief Smeltzer, really tried to help the situation from the very beginning. And people seem to have gotten hung up on the square footage issue, that was the only issue. But there was a huge safety issue when travel trailers are used as long-term residents and full year. There appears to be a tendency that when propane gets very high, wood stoves get put in them. And when a travel trailer catches fire, it's very quick. And that's exactly what happened in this situation to her original living arrangements. It was a travel trailer with an addition on it with a wood stove. So those are complicated issues. And so it wasn't just a square footage issue as much as it was also a life safety issue. And I wanted that to be out in the public. And the other thing I just want to say is that we've worked very hard, and I think we have to deal with this. And I've said it from almost the beginning since I've gotten here. We have a poverty issue, and you can cage it any way you want. But there is an example of we need to address these things, and how. I had a call from a resident who said, "Why don't we allow something smaller that's more affordable for people?" And and maybe that's a discussion we need to have. Maybe it really is a discussion. And Viola's grandson pointed out, Ralph's Home sells a single wide that in Waldoboro that doesn't fit an ordinance in Waldoboro. So maybe that's a discussion that has to be had. And how do you make it more affordable for people like in Viola's situation and others? And how do you make it safe? And I think our goal has to be, you want people to be in a safe environment. And her family rightly so. And I think it was pointed out in one of the articles was there are others that live in similar situations. And what the town tries to do, and it's very hard, and nobody ever wants to remove somebody from their home. That should never be a goal of the town, is we want to remove somebody from their home. But I think we have to be mindful that when the opportunity presents itself, when we can replace those units with something else, that we do that. Because losing one life is a problem. And this, what made it so poignant too, was less than, I think, 2 weeks before, we had the same situation happen where a trailer burned. And I don't know if you guys will remember, this I think was even before my time, but the one travel trailer that was down in the, the trailer park further down past the Patsy's. Brookside, that had a wood stove in it, so I just think we have to be mindful of that, and that's something we have to maybe have some discussions around. And we really do try, just so everybody's really clear, we really do try, our group here, Stan, myself, Max for sure, and Daryl, when people come in and they need help, and Karen Ann especially, that's one of the reasons we have a community navigator, is to help people. And that's why the program was started, was to be helpful, so.
I don't think people realize either, if we do nothing, we sit there and something does happen, somebody's gonna people look at us and say, why did
you let that happen?
Why did we do more?
Right.
So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword.
It's a very slippery slope, because, Stan couldn't connect the electric because it doesn't fit. He couldn't allow the permit because it doesn't fit, and you have all these issues, and if God forbid something were to happen, that falls back on him, and he is our licensed official. So, it's not just something he can just sign his name to. That's his license he's putting on the line. So I just think we have to be mindful. That's it.
Question report?
Go ahead.
I was just curious, Julie, does the town have a position in some kind to work with schools or something to encourage children's vaccinations in particular? I know it's sort of a hot topic, and that's the phase we're sort of in at this point.
To encourage
children's vaccinations for COVID.
We have not gotten into children's vaccines at all. I would say that was more a school parent issue. I mean, I just haven't, I don't think that's something, we don't even have somebody who would recommend that.
Right.
Although we have an EMS medical director, which is Dr. Lee, we really don't have a position as far, I would say a position that could even advise us on that. All I ever say when people call is that we're following Maine CDC and federal CDC recommendations.
Related to that, I don't know if everybody knows, there was a very interesting local Lincoln County TV interview this week on the 21st, I believe, or it was broadcasting the 21st, of our town manager, who did an amazing pitch for the town. Really, if you haven't seen it, you can stream it. It's really pretty good.
Marvin Nesbitt. Larry got me on there. It was nice.
Yeah.
It was good times had by all. It was a real, I thought it was good. And we had not seen each other, Marvin and I had not seen each other since we had been vaccinated. So it was nice to actually see somebody's face.
Our schools did. The Madomic Valley had a clinic, a COVID clinic for students, families, siblings, and the middle school. I watched the middle school kids walk over and partake of that recently.
Cool.
Sorry, I wouldn't know that.
Yep, but it was put on by the school.
Yeah, cool. All right, moving on. Consent calendar. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? New business, policy update.
Oh, yes. These are two policies that myself and Peg recommend. And first one, we are dealing with guests, visitors to the town office and other places. And basically what we're trying to establish is a policy for children of employees, and how, if you are going to have the occasion where you don't have to bring your child to work, or they are there to drop something off, how those visits should proceed, and the areas where visits are prohibited. And I will tell you right now, those would be the high-risk areas, which include machine shop, garage, or similar workshop areas, mechanical rooms, construction areas, maintenance garages, food prep areas, which we don't have many, high security areas where there is no general admittance for all employees, and garages housing emergency vehicles. That's not to say, because I know that one of the big things is we do encourage, especially in the fire department, that children can visit the fire department. We've had classes come and things like that, and sometimes there are children present. We're just trying to mitigate risk and give some guidance on to how those visits, if they have to happen, should occur. And the next one is the
Sorry, could I just have a comment or two on
Yes.
that one? I'm concerned that we're not defining what an emergency is. Because there's a lot of discretionary authority being given here. And in the event of an emergency is one situation under which children could potentially be brought into the workplace.
Well,
I know that's difficult.
It is, because workplace for brief visit, somebody could be bringing you your lunch you forgot.
Yep.
Somebody could be stopping you because they need you to sign something. There's a variety of reasons a spouse or a child who was a spouse is accompanying a child could stop in.
But I think you're talking more here about something that is a little bit longer than just a visit.
Right.
Right?
Specific events.
Yeah.
So like Memorial Day Parade, we have typically allowed children into the fire trucks. Things like that, that would be a specific visit for something. Situational convenience or family emergency, you have, to me, situational convenience is, I have a doctor's appointment I didn't know I had to have, I'm dropping them off here. That is the slippery slope that we're trying to.
Just not having a babysitter an emergency.
Well,
that's a tough question to answer.
No, but
Because-
family emergencies, you know, that's what we're trying to address. And I'm not saying this is abused, but, you know, we recently had a situation where that happened and there needs to be parameters for that. And we looked at a lot of different policies, and this was the one that Peg and I felt very comfortable with. And there definitely is some movement here to allow. So say, and I'll give you an example. I had to be here tonight at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. If my husband, who watches our grandchildren, had something happen and said, I just need 5 minutes, he might have dropped off my grandson. A lot different for me in an office situation where I could put him in an office and sit down. So to me, that's situational. It's not going to be for long. Not sure I want to bring him in here with you guys, but because he might wreak havoc. But if I was at the Public Works garage, that might be a little bit different, where there's heavy equipment and things like that. So I think it's a good starting point. If you want it to tighten it up, I have no problem with that.
I just have a small nit under responsibilities on the the back page. It's the third bold item down in the second line. I think we want to remove the word that, second last word from the end. Employees are responsible for verifying with the town manager the circumstances under which children are allowed in their specific workplace. And do you want to give more discretionary authority in the denial of permission part?
You mean town
just say management has the authority. It is discretionary, isn't it?
Well, it is not discretionary for certain areas.
Okay, another slippery slope. Okay,
High-risk areas.
As long as you feel you're covered by that language tonight. I think it's a great idea to have this in place. It's needed.
It's needed,
Yeah.
but again, it's a complicated thing.
Do you want
It
us to
is.
vote on this tonight, or just look at it for a future?
I wanted you guys to be able to look at it, and, you know, we can vote on it another time, but we need to, I think it needs to be codified.
I agree.
Earned leave policy. And we knew this was coming, this was a change to the state law. And this is directly from Peg. She took this from several other towns. There are exceptions to eligibility for earned leave policy, which was implemented January 1st at the state level. One of the things that all of these personnel managers were having a lot of trouble with in towns was how do you handle your on-call, well, your call firefighters, and that's pretty much what we have, and certain volunteers. So this was the guidance that was given from the various organizations, MMA and others, and how that would work. So you don't want to give paid leave. So I should explain. Currently, under the law, we provide earned paid vacation to employees working more than 20 hours per week. Employees would be able to utilize up to 40 hours of earned vacation leave under the main earned paid leave policy. On-call, so our call firefighters that we have, but also technically in the beginning, the way it was written, are election workers. So they work twice a year. It was one of those things in the law, so this clarifies it. It lets us then, so that we're not giving 40 hours paid leave to somebody who's worked 16 hours. Seasonal workers, also the elected municipal officials shouldn't. Sorry, guys, you're not gonna get any earned paid leave.
True.
Or any board or commission members.
Yeah.
So it really, this is the suggestion from Peg. Again, if you wanna read it over, I know it was just in your packet. If you wanna take till the next meeting and then maybe we can consider this for adoption.
I just needed to clarify in my own mind. Does this is not in addition to the vacation benefits that we offer?
Yes, it is.
That's what I was wondering. Okay, but it doesn't have a cash value. You don't pay it out at the termination of employment.
Correct. And it also affects when they start. So if somebody starts, whereas our vacation time used to kick in after your probationary period, you now at least have 40 hours during your probationary period.
Right.
So that's one of those things.
Yeah.
So again, that's us. But we still have to, and just so you're aware, if you'll recall, back during the budget discussions, Peg and I accounted for that when we knew we would be hiring new positions. So that was also put into the budget. Because we have to be prepared.
Mhm.
Preparation's good.
Do we need to update our personnel policy?
When we do this, that's
when we do it.
That's how we'll do it.
Okay.
And then I'll have to send it all back out.
Yeah.
And have it all signed. Because every time we change it, that's why I'm trying to change as many things as we can at one time. That way they only have to sign it once or twice a year. So if you have anything else you want to change in the personnel policy, now would be a really good time to tell us.
Cool. So we'll put those on the next agenda. That's what you're looking for. So the 2 items.
If that's okay. That would be great, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to 10.2, the MRC notice. Bob, I got the email, I passed it to you, and
Well, I
you
can say,
remember, so.
as of Saturday,
there were no requests for a special meeting from any of the towns that are MRC members.
I thought Bar Harbor had.
They made noises, but they have to give you a written request.
Okay.
And there have been no written requests received for a special meeting.
So we're clear on this, and just for everybody out in the audience who may not know what we're talking about, because sometimes we do that. We think we know, so everybody knows. We belong to the Municipal Review Committee, and Fiber Rate started back in 2014.
Well, the discussion stuff, but they really started operating in November of 2018.
Right.
They became operational in November of 2018.
And it was a very unique technology.
Yep. And no one else in the country knows how to run it. You can't just bring someone in to take over the plant and run it.
So we went with Fiberite,
Yep.
and through the MRC, and the people who operated the plant, there was a really, and you kept us up to date on that, was a series of.
It's a perfect storm.
It really was a perfect storm.
They couldn't export their product to Canada because of COVID. They ran out of working capital because of delays. They started too late onset of winter. They couldn't get permits in time from DEP. And so by the time of May 2019 rolled around, they had to shut down.
So it's been shut down, and our waste has been landfilled since.
Yeah.
This is a sale that was negotiated that would allow for another company to come in. It makes the MRC whole again, from
The
my
MRC
understanding.
loaned some money to the operating company, and MRC is getting its loan money back. It's important to clarify that this plant does not belong to the MRC.
Correct.
It's
Just
not
the
the
land.
MRC's to sell.
Right.
It belongs to the bondholders who financed the construction of the building that operates and processes the garbage. So, and that's been hard for people to get. I mean, it's not for the MRC to sell. The only leverage the MRC has, it's got the customers that bring their garbage to the facility. That provides the cash flow and makes the facility worth something to somebody to own and generate hopefully some money, a profit from operating it. So that's where the MRC has its leverage.
So I think what they have to do per their bylaws is anytime there is a notice of there's a fundamental change, it says fundamental matter, but it
Yep.
really means a fundamental change.
Yep.
They have to give us notice. And I know it's been in the papers and it's been widely discussed. So I just wanted to make sure it made the agenda. Since you're a member of the board, you could explain it better than I could, but the options, the transaction involves the following changes. An option for DTEHM LLC to purchase the land on which the facility sits, a replacement rebate structure, a 2-year extension of the site lease, and a 2-year extension of the master waste supply agreement, which Bob just referred to as what truly the MRC controls. So, we're there.
So, yeah, and basically every town I'm aware of is having this conversation at the select board level, trying to figure out whether they want to call a special meeting or not.
And in order to call a special meeting,
You need 60% of the volume of trash that is contracted with the facility, 60 tons. You need to aggregate towns that have 60 tons of trash to bring to this place.
so without anybody else calling for a meeting, even if we did want to call for a meeting, it's unlikely we would get it.
Right.
I wanted you to be aware. I didn't want to
Yep.
make a decision.
So I had gotten the email and I forwarded it to Bob, because he's on the committee.
Yep.
Asking, what's this all about?
But if you were to read the newspaper, it would appear, it does seem like Bar Harbor,
The newspaper's
Did.
coverage on this up there has been terrible. I
so
mean, it's been bad.
I just wanted to make you aware of that.
10-3.
Oh.
Alcohol.
Oh, guys, this is another confusing one. Shocker. So, the Bureau of Alcoholic Beverages and Lottery Operations, Division of Liquor Licensing and Enforcement, sent us this wonderful notice. Apparently, there are towns that have been handing out liquor licenses that probably they shouldn't have. We are not one of those. However, what they have decided is that local option votes, which have been taken over the years, need to be validated. So we need to validate the information on our voting record as reflected in their files, and make sure that every local option we voted on over the years is really what we voted on. So we had to go back and find out a couple of things. So, sale of liquor for consumption on premises on days other than Sunday. Back in 1968, the town voted yes for that. And that's restricted to spirits, wine, hotels, clubs, Class A restaurants, malt liquor, restaurants, hotels, clubs, and taverns. In 1968, we also voted yes for sale of spirits for consumption of off premises on days other than Sunday at agency liquor stores. So you can do that. In 1968, we approved malt liquor and then wine in 1970, and that is for consumption off premises on days other than Sunday. And then sale of liquor for consumption on the premises on Sundays was 1987, and we said yes, with no restrictions on file. And then finally, in 1980, we voted yes for malt liquor and wine, for sale of malt liquor and wine for consumption off premises on Sundays. So I think we're okay. And here is a list of who is approved. And we have the Big Apple Food Store, Bullwinkle's, Circle K, Flippers Market, Hannaford, Laura Cabot Catering, Maritime Farms and Greavy's, Moore's Sauerkraut, The Narrows Tavern, Odd Alewives, Alewives Farm Brewery, Riverside Billiards, which probably will have to give up their license because they're no longer in existence.
Jim's going back to there, I believe.
Correct. The gym is going back in there. Sammy's Family Entertainment, Shelley's Flower and Gifts, Topsail Farms, and Waldeboro Smoke Shop. So, we have done an exhaustive review. It matches that, but if we wanted to change anything, now is the time.
Do we need to change it?
From what I can determine, we cannot, but there's a lot of questions on the clerk's websites that we have like a blog room that we chat on. There's a lot of questions about this, because we don't want to make a mistake, because if we don't approve it and put it on something in November, it could get sticky. My suggestion is put it on the ballot on November and again, but then what if somebody decided they didn't want to vote for it and then somebody would lose their liquor license? So I think we just have to look at this, and I'm going to send it to our attorney to review so that I make sure we are very well aware of what we have approved and what we haven't.
Could we also send it to the ones listed on it to just do an audit with them?
Yes, we can do that.
And just say, you're on the list, is there any change, or is this right, or is this wrong?
And it's just one thing I wanted to get on your radar, so if you do see some stuff or you get questions from anybody, you're well aware of that. But it was confusing. The first time we read it.
Say the VFW hall doesn't do anything like that, do they, Katie? I mean, the American
They get a
Legion,
one-day
I mean,
liquor license.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
So they wouldn't fall under this then?
But it's interesting, because if you read what's actually approved on here, airlines, here are the current types of on-premise licenses permitted. Airlines, bowling centers, Class A lounges, curling clubs, golf courses, indoor racket clubs, pool halls, taverns. Catering's not there, but I noticed that Laura is, so then when I called the state, they're like, oh, well, that's different.
It does say qualified catering services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still different.
Right.
You know, because I called, I was just like, well, what's how do I know if it's qualified or not? So, same thing with Odd Alewives. I was like, well, it's a brewery. And when you really read it, again, just wanted to make sure we're not doing anything that would harm any of our existing businesses or future businesses. It's where we are with liquor licensing.
So we vote on this later, then you can have this reviewed and stuff.
I'm gonna have it reviewed and see what we need to do, and I'll have a recommendation from you. But I didn't wanna turn this right over to have, this be Pam's first thing she
Yeah.
worked on.
All right. 10-4, Conservation Committee nomination.
Yes, Jan and I received an application from Rachel Morris to be on the Conservation Commission. And we had the opportunity to sit down and visit with her. She's uniquely qualified and excited about it. She got a good reference from Will, who spoke with her. And I think he even encouraged her to take out an application. But yeah, we both agree that she's going to be a fine addition to that commission.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any more discussion?
Thank God for volunteers.
All those in favor?
I know it.
Here, here.
And a young one too.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Old business, MOU discussion.
So at the last meeting, I handed out the draft MOU. So I'll just go over, is that what you would like, I'll just kind of go over the history of this. So we got a cold call, Max and I, from Volunteers of America in
It was 2020.
it was 2020, wasn't it? Yeah.
I didn't remember the exact time.
It was 2020, early 2020. We sent it to the 80 Gray subcommittee had been working on an agreement with a potential developer from Portland. We then gave basically the cold call over to the 80 Gray committee. I believe there was an informal forum at the library.
With Tim Wells?
No, that was Tim Wells.
Right,
And then VOA was here.
right. The
Okay.
order what they gave us the cold call, I think I made the suggestion to the 80 grade subcommittee, before they even looked at Volunteers America. Volunteers America goes to the planning board for a pre-application, because that's what the developer from Portland did, which we did. And
Okay.
then you know the rest of it.
Okay. The non-binding question was held in November. That pretty much gave select board, the green light to say, okay, we should spend time on this. The voters approved it on the non-binding referendum. So this was given to the AD Gray subcommittee. This is a product of negotiation. Again, and I want to say that good faith negotiation was tried a little bit with this. It is difficult when you have competing projects. And I think one of the things that slowed us down a bit was we had, I think in November, a clear direction from the voters of which way they wanted to go. Then another project came up. And in one of the things that took so long, I think, with the MOU was Saran Pine had been on the 80 Gray committee, part of this, and then became, for lack of a better term, the head of the 80 Gray Park Coalition. She then stepped down, and another member stepped up. So there was some lag in there of getting back on track with negotiations. This is strictly a memorandum of understanding. It is non-binding. This is what we will take if the voters approve the question on the ballot. This is the basis of what we take to go into binding negotiations. I will go over the highlights of this. Do you want me to do that? I mean, so
You feel as though,
we know what this is a map of the subject property of what this would encompass. Unfortunately, mine, when it printed out strange words, but that's what it looks like. The duration of this, the parties contemplate completion of a mutually acceptable option agreement by later of June 15th, 2021, or the next town select board meeting. We may want to push that off since the election is June 8th. And if it does pass, obviously you would need more time. It does state that it is non-binding. The key terms here are it is the BOA's intention to obtain and repurpose the subject property to a 32-unit affordable senior housing facility accommodating seniors age 55 and older and seniors age 62 and a half years and older. BOA's goal is to serve the affordable rental housing needs of seniors residing in the town and its neighboring communities within the parameters of affordable housing development funding guidelines as Maine State Housing Authority may stipulate from time to time. BOA will not solicit or accept funding from sources that accommodate unit rentals to residents younger than 55 years of age, except to the extent required by federal law. If BOA requires funding from sources that require unit rentals for residents younger than 55 years of age, BOA and the town shall discuss such sources prior to BOA committing to them. The ownership, the option agreement, BOA will fully disclose to the town the intended owners, partners, developers, and all other third parties which have or obtain or will obtain an equity or creditor interest in the subject property and clarify the nature of the business relationships to the satisfaction of the town. In the event intended owners or developers change before or after BOA exercises its options to purchase the subject property, the BOA will obtain the town's prior written agreement to such changes. The town will not unreasonably withhold any permission. There is a standstill period during the option period. The term of the option agreement will afford BOA the right until close of business at the town office on June 30th, 2022 to exercise its option to purchase the subject property pursuant to the terms of the option agreement. Performance benchmarks. The option agreement will require BOA to submit a timeline which will include performance benchmarks identifying potential sources of funding and receipt of funding, commencement of construction and completion of construction, issuance of appropriate certificates of occupancy, and other items of mutual concern. This was very important to, this next section was extremely important to the 80 Gray subcommittee, and that was two bonds. One is the typical performance bond that you would experience during a construction project, and the other was a payment bond. As a condition of the execution and delivery of the option agreement, BOA will deliver to the town as beneficiary a payment bond for a mutually agreed upon amount that reasonably compensates the town in the event BOA fails to obtain funding, runs out of funding, or encounters any other issues which prevent the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the project. So there was a lot of discussion around this. And it came down to, it's a payment bond in the event that they run out of funding or there's any other issues and it prevents an issue, a certificate of occupancy from being issued. One of the things that we learned was, and it was through Maine Housing, was that if they get their funding from Maine Housing, which is most likely what it will be, Maine Housing will not essentially allow the project to fail. They'll step in and they complete the project. So that amount, there was $500,000, I believe, was bantered around at one point. What that amount comes out to be of what that payment bond is, will be determined in the option agreement. So is it a graduated an amount? So if you get to this point and this much work is done, is the amount less? That can be negotiated during the option agreement phase. The town and VOA will provide to one another the maps, reports, plans, and other materials in their possession that concern the subject property. Due diligence during the term of the option agreement. During the term of the option agreement, VOA will perform full due diligence, including meeting all requirements of potential local, state, or federal grant or loan programs. VOA's understanding is that the town has clean title to the property, and VOA will perform its own title search. The consideration was and has been $1. Payment in lieu of taxes. So regardless of its nonprofit status, VOA is not opposed to providing revenue to the town after VOA exercises its options to purchase the subject property. The town and VOA agree to address payment of real estate taxes and/or payments in lieu of taxes during their negotiation of terms of the option agreement. So that is something that has to be done during the option agreement. And I'll give you, because a lot of people are confused about this, is one of the questions I'm getting all the time is, what is a payment in lieu of taxes? And the easiest way that I can explain it is we have land trusts in town. And the land trust pays a percentage, essentially, of what the full payment would have been on those taxes. That is a negotiated item. So say, and this is where taxes is very hard to say, or payment in lieu. We don't even know what the building in the end would even remotely be assessed at. And how we would determine that percentage is difficult. So that has to be left to the option agreement. So that's where that comes in. Closing costs, VOA is responsible for the closing costs. Financial statements and cash flows. During project construction, VOA will provide to the town copies of all financial reports it is required to submit to its funders. Prior to the issuance of certificates of occupancy, VOA's project manager will submit to the town manager an architectural certificate of completion with customary funding. Building and operator assignment, VOA will confirm that it will operate and manage the completed project in accordance with main housing guidelines. If VOA were to wish to assign its ownership interest in the property or its operations and management obligations to a third party, VOA will not do so without the town's prior written consent, which the town will not unreasonably withhold. And I think that was done to address concerns that who could it be turned over to? We want to have some type of a say. Legal description and survey costs, VOA will provide a legal description of the property satisfactory to the town at their expense. And they will also pay the cost of surveys. Historic designation, and I just want to remind me, I did receive from Susan Sved something she read during this. The town, prior to execution of the option agreement and without any expenditure of town funds, will make its best effort to complete the process of attaining a historic designation for the property. In the event the town is unable to complete the process without expending its own funds, VOA will assume responsibility for the process and pay related expenses without recourse for reimbursement from the town, and the town will fully cooperate with VOA. VOA and the town understand and agree that if the town obtains federal historic designation grant funding to improve the subject property and utilizes the funding to finance the improvements, the AD Gray building will not be eligible for demolition. Zoning, the town will use its best effort to cooperate with VOA during the town's planning and permitting process at VOA's sole expense to comply with the town's zoning regulations. And any changes to town zoning regulations that VOA seeks will be subject to voter approval. So if they need zoning changes, it's subject to voter approval. That's what that says.
Yep.
Applications for financing. VOA will take the sole lead in applying for and managing federal and state funding opportunities to initiate rehabilitation and improvements to the subject property to meet affordable senior housing standards, and the town will assist where appropriate. Remediation. VOA will comply with and will provide proof of compliance for all remediation that is required in Phase 2 environmental assessment conducted by the Lincoln County Planning Commission. If it becomes necessary to obtain a release under the Maine Voluntary Response Action Program, the town will cooperate with VOA to obtain such a release. Title and other insurance. VOA will obtain title insurance for the subject property and provide standard liability and other insurances typical of insurances VOA provides for similar properties under VOA management or ownership. Tenant plan. VOA will submit a mutually acceptable tenant plan to the town. The tenant plan, which will become part of the option agreement. The purpose of the tenant plan is to describe the envisioned residence of the property. Local preference. If VOA exercises its option pursuant to the option agreement, VOA or its designated contractors will, to the extent allowable under federal and state law, give preference to Waldoboro residents and/or Waldoboro companies or contractors when hiring during the construction and operations management phases of the project. In order to comply with funder requirements, VOA retains the ultimate discretion in the hiring of a construction manager and contractors for the project who or which may not be Waldoboro-based companies or individuals. So they're going to do their best they can, but there might be requirements that perhaps somebody in Waldoboro does not meet. And ownership revision clause. VOA and the town will exert their best efforts to include in the option agreement an ownership reversion clause that calls for the transfer of all right, title, claim, and interest in the subject property to the town in the event VOA does not complete the project. The reversion clause, if permitted by VOA's lenders and investors, must be subject and subordinate to terms and conditions of the Maine State Housing Authority's prior security interest and restrictive covenants. So we learned through speaking with Maine Housing that we would be very far down the list. And again, Maine Housing has explained once that project is funded and it moves and say it's 80% done, that next 20%, that funding has already existed, that's going to be completed. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they addressed that in the forum.
I was hoping that Maine Housing would be part of the forum. They
Right.
didn't show up.
They had a director,
They-
one of the board of directors was there, but
He didn't contribute.
but the one
Yeah.
gentleman did not.
But he did say during conversations that we
Mhm.
had with him that there were a couple of projects that they had that were not going the way they should have, and they called VOA in,
Right, or
To help out.
another company
or another
too.
company to finish it up.
If they are not going the way that they're supposed to, they do have those protections.
Yes. It's a bonding issue, and the credibility of the financing that they provide to these projects. You need to have people to buy the bonds. People need to know the bonds are good, that the project is going to work, that the cash flow is going to proceed to pay off the bond. And if something happens to a project that Maine Housing is funding, their bond rating goes down, and maybe they lose credibility in the market. So it's very important for them to maintain the quality of their bonding, and they do.
So like you said, people need to understand this is what is in the actual memorandum of agreement. It's been up on the website. This is what is out there. And I'll be honest, I really pushed for this to get done because I thought it was important that people be able to look at it. And I know it doesn't give all the answers everybody would like, but I do think that it's important that people realize a lot of work went into this by the A.D. Gray subcommittee. And all along, I got questions, and this has been, and I'll be honest with you guys, and you guys know it, it's been a contentious issue. I get calls on an almost daily basis about this. I get calls from pro, I get calls from con, I get calls from people who just want clarification or they read something on Facebook. I have spent an inordinate amount of time defending the sanctity of the A.D. Gray Committee because there's been a lot of drama kind of surrounding that, just because the person who was the chair of the committee, like I said, is now part of the Park Coalition. Comments are made on Facebook from members of the family of some of the current members of the 80 Gray Committee, so there's a lot of questions from the public out there, and I just want to assure everybody involved, and I mean this, the people who devoted their time to the 80 Gray Committee really, I think, did their best, and they don't always agree. You're never going to find a committee that everybody agrees on. But I think that, you know, they really put good ideas down. They came up with what ifs, and I think they tried to address it. And then my job was to kind of come in and then negotiate what could be done and couldn't be done with the VOA. And I think this represents the fruit of that good faith negotiation. Like I said, not everybody got what they wanted. I tend to think that's a good negotiation. That's what I've always been told, is if you shouldn't walk away really sad and you shouldn't walk away really happy. You should have that feeling. And again, I think it's important that the voters get to know and have that accurate information. So hopefully that gives everybody a good overview. Please log on to our website. It's right there, the front page. You'll see a picture of 80 Gray. If you click on, I think it says more information, doesn't it, Max? Read more. Read more. It comes up. Max has put a lot of information. There's also a link to the forum. I encourage everybody to watch the forum. It's very informative. I had a gentleman call me today, asked me a lot of questions, and I said, have you watched the forum? He called back and he goes, thank you for telling me about that. He goes, it was an interesting 2 hours. So I think that was something that was really good. But when you start to take questions from the public, I just want to make sure that
Why don't you go ahead and start with that first?
You want me to start
Yeah,
with
get that.
this? I just have to open up my email. This is from Susan Sped. I am unable to attend tonight's meeting, but I would like to express a concern I have regarding the VOA proposal. There has been talk of historic tax credits for the property being available for use by VOA. I have been able to do a minimum amount of research on this issue. I have asked VOA for information on this issue and have not received a response. I will let you know. She later sent a email with VOA's response. So she asked me to read that also. So I'm going to read this first and then read that. The first thing that struck me about historic tax credits is that they appear to be a big business. Very impressive, slick CPA firms, certified professional accounting firms have created big businesses advising corporations of the use of these tax credits. What struck me is how nonprofit organizations can sell those tax credits to private businesses for money. Apparently for a lot of money, and apparently for enough money to pay the high-priced CPA firms a good profit. The numbers I saw in one promotional piece was that the buyers could get up to a 25% tax credit. Would that mean Exxon could get a 25% tax credit if VOA were to sell to them, or a drug company or a big bank? I do not represent that this is the case. I certainly am not a CPA, but I would use one if I had a large business. I asked the representative from VOA questions at the forum held last week. He said he was not the person at VOA to answer regarding this issue. He did not dispute that VOA was intending to sell the historic tax credits I asked about, but he did say he would get back to me. He did not, so I have sent him a list of questions. He did imply that my questions were negative. I have to wonder why. I viewed them as informational for the people of Waldoboro. If the park project gets voted down on the upcoming ballot and the question regarding VOA gets a yes vote, only the select board will see and vote on the VOA project. The citizens of Waldoboro will not have a say in the project or its terms. It's a shame because there are many people in our community who are familiar with historical tax credits and be able to advise the select board on what is in the best interest of the town. Obviously, the town can hire advisors and should, but it will be expensive. Perhaps the citizens will be best served by analyzing the value of historic tax credits independently of the VOA project. It could be that Waldoboro has a very valuable asset and the sale of it could reap more for the town than subsidized elder housing. 50 years old is now elder, really? Oh, I should read that better. 50 years old is now elder, really? And then we may have money to reduce our taxes or build a skating rink or a pickleball court. Talk about those 50 plus years having fun exercising. If the select board is assuming total responsibility for the contract with BOA, its members need to be prepared to shoulder total responsibility. They need to examine how valuable these tax credits are. So then she sends later to me, Julie, I am between doctor's appointments. When I dictated my last comments to you, in full disclosure, I just found this response from BOA. You may want to read this tonight as well. Susan, thanks again for your questions. Tax credits are a complex subject, and I applaud you for trying to wade your way through the murk of it all. It's not a perfect system for developing affordable housing, but it's what we have. As I mentioned, I had our technical person that deals with tax credits review your questions, and below is his response. If there are further areas of clarification needed, please let me know. The creation of affordable housing and rehabilitation of historic structures in the United States both rely on programs administered by the IRS. These programs allow for nonprofit corporations to provide funds upfront for construction in exchange for tax credits over a 5 or 10 year period. BOA is a nonprofit corporation and therefore does not have tax liability in order to use these programs. So it partners with organizations in order to access funding and complete the development. In order to find the best partner, BOA will issue a request for proposals and will make a selection based on a combination of experience, deal terms, and maximization of cash to the development. Typically in Maine, affordable housing developments, these investors are banking institutions or insurance companies looking for a stable investment and ways to meet their obligations under the Community Reinvestment Act. The procurement process for an investment partner will be conducted by BOA staff members. Consultation will be provided by staff at the Genesis Fund, a local community development financing institution, and design professionals to ensure the project meets the Maine State Historic Preservation Office and National Park Services rehabilitation requirements. Maine Housing will be a key financial partner in the redevelopment of the school site. BOA will follow their strict underwriting and design and construction guidelines. Maine Housing will provide construction and permanent debt to the property. BOA completes voluntary annual financial audits that are then provided to regulatory agencies and bank partners. There seems to be an underlying question of who benefits from the completion of the development. All parties from the town and BOA to the investors and design professionals will benefit from completing the housing development. Specifically, BOA will receive a developer fee for its project management work and financial risk to complete the development. The amount of the fee is regulated by Maine Housing. The 80 Gray property will be held in a limited partnership where BOA will be the general partner and the tax credit investor will be the limited partner. Unfortunately, this complicated process is the method that our federal government has decided to use to build affordable housing and rehabilitate historic structures. I suggest reaching out to your legislative representatives if you want to recommend a different approach to providing federal resources into our communities to make these important investments for current and future generations. And he said you had also asked about our board members. That information can be found on our website. Again, if you have further questions, please let us know. Kind regards, Brian. So because she asked, I spent a lot of time on the phone with her today. I just wanted to make sure I read that, and then she asked me to read the next thing for the record. That's all I have. I'm sorry, I'm so long-winded.
You're ruining my short.
Well, you know, some things happen. It's okay.
Is there any other board members got any questions? You're all good? The public, any questions? Seth? Yes, please.
That's the only way we can hear on the tape.
I'd like to just give you all of these, and I'll refer to these in just a minute.
Thank you.
So Seth Hall, resident. Mostly I have questions, just in the spirit of sort of clarifying what this process, in particular the process of the, not so much the MOU, but the option negotiation process and how that takes place, and what some of the relevant questions that I think the public is generally concerned about are. For example, the magnitude of the numbers we're talking about, I think, is important, and then that information isn't real yet and comes out of the process of the option negotiation. But just FYI for you and for the feedback of the town, given the state and federal historical preservation credits, which, as Julie pointed out, or Brian pointed out, are in fact sold to investors as part of, it's like a PPA in our solar landfill right. It's how they pay for it. They harvest the tax credits with a nonprofit like the town can't do. Those range for a project like our 80 Gray property, just based roughly on size and history, between the hundreds of thousands of dollars and maybe up to $2 million. So the numbers can be quite large, significant for all of us, just to be aware of. I think the reason that's important is because if we sell this property to the VOA for $1, we should understand what their financial interests are over the long period. This handout I just gave you, I'm sorry I can't project it for the public, just aggregates a couple of very simple numbers. For example, I believe that the VOA people said at the forum that the rents are generally in the range of, with income restrictions, $650 to $800. I don't remember if it was $8 or $850, but something like that. And as you can see in the chart, that leaves that yields monthly revenues and annual revenues, which produce some sort of eye-popping numbers that I think the town and the select board, of course, are very interested in. There are two sets of numbers. I'm not exactly sure how this has happened, but there's frequently a reference to 32 or 36 units. I think originally they said maybe up to 36, which is why I have the second set of numbers there, 36. And just for the people who are listening who can't see this, we're talking about with an average rent of $650 for 32 units, about $21,000 a month in gross income. If it was 800, it'd be about $25,500, which ends up being annual revenue in the order of $250,000 to $310,000. Pretty noticeable. And over 40 years, the claim is the period they're planning for, between 10 and $12.3 million. So pretty good-sized numbers. The numbers are linear and correspondingly higher with 36 units versus 32. Big money is involved here. In terms of revenue or donations or payments in lieu of taxes, in the center of this sheet, just as an example, just for talking purposes, if we were to assess, and as Julie points out, this is a very complicated issue that towns can struggle with no matter what, the valuation of the property and what is done. The VOA people say they intend to spend a little over $6 million on this project. That will be their direct investment to build it. That's not the same number as what they're worth after you build it. Just like a house builder will build a house for $300,000, he'll sell it for $5,000 if he can. So the valuation is different than the cost to the actual project. But for example, if a tax payment, a payment in lieu of taxes was based on $1,000 a unit a year, that would be a annual revenue of about $32,000 for the town. If it was $1,500, for example, that'd be $48,000, and then 40-year revenues equivalently just multiplied out. Those are pretty low numbers because, as we all know who own houses, and most of us do, we all pay much more for even a very modest house than $1,000. This is just related to the mill rate that you guys established, actually, and the cost of property, and it's going up radically. So the numbers actually could be much higher, and this is a negotiating point for the committee, or I assume it's going to be a committee, who negotiates the options with the VOA. The numbers can be very, very large, and I would hope that, the only reason I'm mentioning them is I hope they would be not shy about trying to derive maximum benefit for the town, for this project, whatever the project goes forward as. And I'm relatively ambivalent about the project. This is not an argument for or against the project. this is an argument informing some of the critical things for the option agreement process. The third point, the negotiation of the option agreement, I would like to hear if anybody at this table is willing to opine about it. Will this be an open process? This is a non-competitive bidding situation. We have a captive project manager who is just trying to do their thing with elderly, low-income housing, which is good. The town is trying to figure out how to not only make that happen, but simultaneously benefit the town itself, which is a perfectly normal thing for the town to do. It seems to me that should be an open process, whether it's an open committee meeting, for example, well, I don't know what the plan is for establishing that committee. I'll leave that to you guys to speak to. But I would like to ask if it's going to be an open process, not an executive session, which some business in this town has done, in my opinion, inappropriately. I'm almost done. I'm wondering if, like the Miller ball fields, when the Madomet Valley Community Foundation worked with the town to build those, I believe the town had a clerk of the works. That was before your time, but some of you were here. And I think
it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was 2002 or something. But they did that so that the town actually had their finger in the process and could monitor, as with financial statements and agreements and so forth, the quarterly reports or whatever they're going to be. Really had protection for the town's interest in the whole process from the day they broke ground right through. I'd love to know if there's any thought about that for this process by this board. And then finally, there was a comment about selling or turning over for ownership or management or other eventualities the property in the future if the Volunteers of America had to do that. And I think it's very important to know that in spite of the fact that they say they would, of course, work in the best interest of the town, that's actually controlled by the federal government and the funding sources. They have very little to say about it, which is in some sense what happened with the Sproul Block. HUD changed the rules for everybody all over the country after a lot of public housing was built with all good intentions. And sometimes the outcome isn't perfect. And I think that's very important for the public and the board to know. And they did actually add the caveat that they, VOA, in the MOU, conditioned by or something like that, federal guidelines and rules. And federal rules trump local, period. You have no say about it. If the federal funding sources change their rules, which the Congress could do, we could be screwed. So that's a question for the process of negotiation and just for people to generally think about. But I'm done. I'd be happy to answer questions about this for anybody that wants, and I'll give one to the press as well. But I would like to know what you're thinking about if you've thought about it yet, the committee or the structure and the openness of the process for negotiating the option agreement. I'm sure you must have talked about that. And I'll sit down.
We have not.
Well, maybe you haven't.
We have not. We have not got that far, I don't believe.
I
I haven't discussed it with anybody, I have no clue what it would even look like, so.
Okay,
I think we'll know after the election and go from there, I guess, and if this goes forward or not.
Okay. Then I would just conclude. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I would just encourage you to keep it as open as possible if the election proves to the affirmative for the proposal. I hope the town will do everything it possibly can to keep it transparent, the whole process, even establishing that process, the committee, whatever that happens to be, that is broad and inclusive. And as Julie said, when a negotiation worked, when both sides don't get everything, and you bitch and grump about some things, but you're happy about some other pieces you get. And the best way, in my view, to accomplish that process is to be as open and giving and listening to the public as possible. And that seems to me to be the responsibility of the board. I'd be happy to answer any questions related to any of this here.
Anybody have any questions? Guess you're all set.
Good, thanks.
Thank you for that.
again, and I just wanna reiterate, this is Seth's impression of that. This isn't a representation from BOA.
Oh, it has nothing to do with it. This
Right.
is just calculator work on Excel.
Right.
Thank you for that.
I don't wanna give anybody the impression that came from BOA.
No,
Yeah, because I don't remember exactly what they said for rentals. I think they're out
So,
to
and
45
rentals are
years, not
based on
40.
what they finally come out with the AMI, so
Yeah.
those numbers could be significantly higher. You don't know yet.
I think it's on, I think they said something about what someone would earn in a year.
Yes.
So those could be $900 a month versus
yes.
8 or 7.
And again, the AMI, just to give you an example, the AMI that is applied at sprawl block is, I believe, in the 30s versus the AMI that's gonna be through this funding is between 60 and 65% of mine.
There's a big difference
There's a
between
big
section
difference
8
there,
housing
so
and section
that
202
rent
housing.
could vary greatly,
Yeah.
so I just don't wanna give anybody the impression.
And
That's,
I don't know if it's any different where this is a nonprofit versus privately owned entity. Is there differences in funding? I don't know if there is.
If there is differences, and there's
what it
different
seemed like.
things, like if they could go through LIHTC, there's a lot of different things that they can go through, and I mean, that was the one thing that was interesting in speaking with Maine Housing was just the amount of options that are out there, but again, they are limiting themselves in their funding abilities because they went with the senior housing option. The other thing I wanna bring up is, and I think that's where numbers come in that people have, because when you run those numbers, just like Seth did, and say, well, there's $35,000 and you could get in taxes. Again, it's gonna come down to what is the value of that building in the end? What is the negotiated percentage of what that in lieu payment could be? So those numbers that people have quoted, and I've heard them been bantied around, I've been asked, well, what are the taxes on this amount of money? What are the taxes on that amount of money? If the assessment was this, you can do the calculation just like Seth did and come up with those numbers too. So again, those numbers are based on what happens, that number, that payment in lieu of taxes, again, is based on what is negotiated in the option agreement.
And I think it's safe to say that nobody sitting at this table has bandied around any numbers whatsoever in regard to potential taxes or payments in lieu of taxes.
But again,
If you're hearing numbers like that, they're coming from,
I haven't heard any.
but again, and I'll be honest, I did speak with Elaine. And Elaine came and talked to me for like 2 hours. Again, if you're asked questions about if it's worth this much, what are the tax rates, there's simple calculations that can be done. And I mean, I think I clarified a lot of things, just like I do with anybody who comes in. I'm very good about trying to be very clear on what was in the agreement and what we can do and what we can't do. And I just want to disagree with the whole, we have to be careful when we are negotiating. And I get, you're a really big person on transparency. I totally understand that. But there's also times when we can't be transparent. There's times we all would love to be much more transparent than we're allowed to by Maine law. I personally would love to see FOIA changed with the executive sessions, because in New Jersey, we would have executive sessions, we'd have to take minutes. And then once the thing, the whatever we were talking about was resolved, that all became public record. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful way to handle things, because you would know. So with the exception of personnel matters, if we negotiated a contract, which we did many times in executive session, is normal, it's done all over the state of Maine, it's done all over all the states, I imagine, in our 50 states. But I can tell you about New Jersey was, we would negotiate a contract. We took detailed minutes, just like we would in public session. We could not release them till the matter was done. So after the contract was done, you could then take those minutes and make those public. I would actually say that would be a great thing to take to the legislature and say, this is what towns should do. But again, we have to follow the rules we're given, and sometimes things do need to be negotiated in executive session. And it's not something that people want necessarily to keep quiet. Believe me, there were times when I was hearing the town gets nothing, absolutely nothing, you're not gonna get anything. I wanna say, there's a thing called payment in lieu of taxes. So there's a thing called payment in lieu of taxes. Because sometimes too, you feel as a public official, you'll hear things about yourself, or you'll hear, this is what you were doing, and you wanna correct the record. I'll be honest with you, I stay off of Facebook right now because I would be correcting the record all the time. I'd be on Facebook going, what? People text me over the weekend to tell me what's going on, and I'm like, what? So, it's very hard, and I, like I said, I would love to see that law change where after the fact you could find out. Maybe not during, because you can't always share, but after the fact, I think it would be a great way, and I think you guys would all be very impressed with how hard the AD Gray committee really did work to come up with this. And again, this gives the public something they can look at. They can make an informed decision. We've been promoting the forums. People have been calling. People who've gotten their ballots have been calling. We refer them. Look at the forum. We do our best. Believe it or not, today I had a question, and it was about the shellfish budget. Why it is not funded by the tax dollars, why it's funded by licensing fees, and the person thought that it was an important enough thing that tax dollars should be spent on. And I said, well, you have to take that up with the Shellfish Committee because they're very adamant that it's not. So, is there any other questions? I'm talking your job, I'm sorry. I'm shutting up.
Is there any other?
Just had a brief question regarding the MOU. When you mentioned that,
Would you go up to the left?
If you
So
didn't
we can
mind,
hear you
so we
really
can
well.
hear you.
No. So when you mentioned that, if BOA had to unfortunately walk away because they couldn't secure funding, that Maine Housing would step in, and I don't foresee that happening, but would Maine Housing be restricted by the same extent? Would they have to rent to the same people that BOA would, like the seniors?
So if they didn't get their funding, there's a point in here, a standstill during option period. So the town will agree not to market the subject property or to sell the subject property during the term of the option agreement. Specifically, the town will not encourage other proposals. So if they didn't get their funding, they could still, the reversion clause and the payment bond are more for, they get their funding and they start.
I must have missed something. I thought at some point you said that, if something, if they fail, Maine Housing comes in.
Right,
to finish the project.
After funding is received and they start the project, that's when
I
Maine
got you.
Housing would
Okay.
come in. Prior to funding being received, they could theoretically walk away.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank
So
you.
we'll know what that funding is.
Before they even start, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
And we want to know what that funding is. Bob and Jan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We want to know what that funding is before we sign the option agreement.
Right.
So they have to figure out, we'll be able to sit here and tell you it's LIHTC funding, or it's
Section 202.
Section 202 funding. So those are things that we'll be able to tell you.
And will be covered if they do walk away
With the payment bond, and again, that has to be,
That's a key.
That's in place when they sign the option.
that's in
That's-
place when they
that's-
sign.
That's
And
big.
And that, well, and again, that was done to prevent what happened in the past with the building when,
The why.
and the Y and the town. And I know that upsets a lot of people when I say it, but the town had the
Yeah, the
obligation.
town had,
The town had the obligation too. You can't do this. Sometimes you gotta do this too. So, and I really hope everybody understands, we're getting a lot of good questions, and we try to answer them the best that we can. Some aren't, some I have to, say I can't answer for, so I've been referring people to you, Vicki, I've been referring people to Saran, because I don't have the answers sometimes from the coalition. But, we're trying to be as helpful as we can without, I had somebody today ask me, what do you think? I said, I don't think. I said, I don't have an opinion on this. The town is making that decision. You have to, so we're being as
So what are
open
you
and
asking of
transparent.
this tonight? Just,
It's up to you guys. I thought it was important, since you got the MOU last week.
Yep.
If you wanna consider it, if you're just going to let it ride, but I wanted the public to be able to see it. I thought it was really
Change the date on
important.
that, correct?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So,
We would change the date, we'd have to change the date on it. My other issue was, I've gotten a lot of questions about, like, if it does pass, if the VOA option passes, when does the option agreement take effect? I just want everybody to be clear, the option agreement still has to be negotiated.
it's not even.
And
applied.
it's, right, what the attorney wrote, that question that we put on is what our attorney wrote, and it does give the authority, so people are clear, it does give the authority to the select board. And whether or not they, negotiate it themselves, or if they have a committee. The one thing I would say, though, is that if we do use a committee again, and they were very helpful, I do think it has to be very clear of the credentials of the people. It has to be very clear that, you really do need to be neutral. One of the worst things that happened during this process is people, whether it be real or imagined, is the perception, and I've defended this numerous times to numerous individuals, the perception that we went into it without good faith because, a member changed their, supported another project, or, somebody's family member has an opinion that is different than what was. It's very difficult, so I think we just have to make sure that everybody is very clear that the committee was extremely open-minded and fair, and that nothing came out of here that was, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but there was no, okay, I'm putting this in, so this can't happen. It really was not that case. And I don't ever want anybody to have that, and there's a lot of that out there, and I have to explain that a lot, so, that's what I got.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we authorize our town manager to sign this MOU on behalf of the town
With the
with appropriate changes regarding the date, and leave that to her discretion.
Is there a second?
Second. What are you leaving to my discretion, so I'm clear on it?
The date on the negotiation of the, finalizing the option agreement. I would think you would discuss that with VOA and come up with a timeline that makes a bit more sense.
Do you want me to bring that back to you on the 8th?
On June 8th, yeah.
Are we having a meeting on June 8th? That was one of my other questions.
We usually do. On
Yeah, we
election night.
usually do.
Yeah,
Okay.
we usually have a meeting.
And there was a second, correct? Any more discussion?
What's the, I don't understand about the date. What's going on with the date?
Well, because the date in the agreement says that we must accept an acceptable option agreement no later than June 15th, and
Which we
the
haven't
vote is on the
started
June
that.
8th.
We hadn't even started even talking about the option.
So you just wanna further it ahead?
Yes.
Make it current.
Push it out.
You want to set it July 15th and start from, it's a non-binding agreement, but there is an indicator of intent here, that's all.
Okay. My other issue, well, let's finish that and I'll go to my other issue.
So the motion is for you to use your discretion on that particular
Okay,
topic.
just wanted to be clear on that.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Okay. Move along. You said
June 8th,
yes.
we're gonna be done by 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Because.
Hey, I'm holding that.
I know, it's always my fault.
I point the
I'm
finger
just
at
saying that is election night, we're gonna have to close the polls at 8 o'clock, and, I still have Marcus, who's only been through this once. I have Max and I will need to be done so that we can,
So we're gonna need a light meeting on.
we're gonna need a light meeting.
Should we
on
start at
June.
5 again? Just to
Uh,
make sure that,
I mean, we could start at 5 with executive, but I wouldn't change the actual time of the public. I don't like to do that.
okay,
I just don't like to do that.
We get-
People are used to 6 o'clock.
So we get two things on the agenda already for next meeting.
Yeah.
These two, does
Yeah.
anybody else got anything?
We've got the policy and we've got maybe something to do.
Flags?
I am sorry, I did not mean to be, I am totally out of the loop on what the flag discussion is.
There was an email, she backed out.
I did not get
Because I
To
think
an
it went
change
to
the, change the times that they go up and be taken down. Because I think they're up too long and the wind is just making rags out of them and they
I
just
think we
need,
can handle that fairly quickly.
Well, and I think that's a discussion that we should have with Paul, who's the fire department, who's, they would love, the original intent that Paul had was they would be down right after
4th of July,
Labor Day.
yeah, or Labor Day, that long.
But then people wanted them left up to Veterans Day. But once you get into Veterans Day, you can get winter and snow, so
when do they go up?
typically they go up before Memorial Day, but I do not know what, to be honest with you, I saw Paul for 2 seconds before I walked in here. I didn't even think flags.
Well, if you didn't see the email.
I'm sorry, I was not included on that email.
I can forward that to you.
If somebody could forward it to me, that would
I
be
think it
helpful.
just went to the select board, I do believe. I don't remember.
And we also have to address the heights of them because some of them are getting habitually tangled. I think it was a wonderful idea. But again, we're at the point now where things need to be replaced and there is no funding. So that's part of the issue too.
Cool, is that it? Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So so moved.
Is there a
Second.
second?